This is the Fifth Estate Winning Headlines, your media police post, coming to you from Nairobi, Kenya, from the Fort Hall School of Government. In this segment, we summarize some of the headlines that you may have missed this morning, but we also take a look at some of the political pieces that we call cartoons in this country. Today is a July 3rd, 2020, and I am Tuem.
I am 2J.
And I am GK, and in case you missed the headlines, here they are. In the Daily Nation, remaking of the cabinet. In the Standard, Uhuru Raila MP's deadlock over posts. And in the Star, 2.6 million Kenyans have COVID-19, says Kemri.
Wow.
Let us begin with the Daily Nation. There is a remaking of the cabinet, not a shelf, but of the... but,
Really?
Yeah. But Uhuru Kenyatta is thinking of doing a cabinet reshuffle, we are told. This is still speculative at the moment, but I think where they smoke this fire. For the last month, we've been hearing stories of rumors that there is going to be a cabinet reshuffle. Now, the Daily Nation goes on to tell us that he has asked, the president has invited Raila Odinga, Kalonzo Musyoka, Gideon Moi, and Musalia Mudavadi to propose names of cabinet nominees. I think the first question is, Musalia Mudavadi has not played ball yet, so I don't know why he's being asked to nominate anybody for cabinet. But the idea here is that, or rather the Daily Nation tells us that there are some ministries that have been targeted. Mr. Simon Chelugui for Labour and Social Protection, and Mr. Charles Keter for Energy. But yeah, the fact that I think this is just part of the consolidation of, power. Kenyatta and Odinga are saying we want to install our own men and women to process our own agendas in the next few years.
Absolutely.
On my part, I would say that this cabinet need be political, especially as we come to 2022. I think that the technocrats or the corporate types have done nothing in terms of political mileage for Uhuru Kenyatta. Even if good things are being done, those people are not being able to articulate the good things that they're doing because they're so used to the corporate way of doing stuff. A politician is good for the job, and that's why we're seeing someone like C.S. Kagwe Mutahi is so good at
and what he does.
What he does. He understands that balance.
I couldn't agree more. You see, the reason I support a remake of the cabinet is because now I have seen gross insubordination from William RUTO. I mean, yesterday, the Hustler Nation trooped to their headquarters in Karen, and they went to receive tanks, fish tanks, I don't know, some equipment, hair dryers and all that stuff. But there's one guy who said, Deputy President, we see you getting frustrated and all that, and it's not good, but when the time comes, we will and then he goes and William RUTO stretches out his arm and they do a fist bump with this guy who said that. Now, this guy is, the Deputy President is using that office, which is a state office, to actually undermine his boss.
Parallel government.
He's running a parallel government. In 2005, Kibaki fired. He dissolved the entire cabinet. And that's because everyone in the cabinet was, the Raila, Balala, and all the fellows. They went against.
They had their
Kibaki.
own agendas.
So Kibaki fired all of them. So why shouldn't Uhuru do that right now?
Yeah, I think also ultimately this is kind of giving us our first taste of what BBI may have in store for us. This is pointing towards that inclusive, consociational, model that we see the president is looking towards. Asking all of these people, come forward, give me your nominees, and we can do it together. So I think
because they represent different constituents of the country.
This is something to be applauded.
Can we move to the Standard where we're saying there's a deadlock?
Yes, Uhuru Raila MP's deadlock over posts. Now, there's been suspicions by ODM side of a Jubilee's proposed list of members to House committees. Now, one John Buddy said that there are serious reservations about the proposed changes by Jubilee to the Justice and Legal Affairs Committee and the Delegated Legislation Committee. And this is because some of those names included Tanga names. Now, I was asking myself,
what's the big deal?
What's the Buddy's business? What's his problem? See, do you ever see Uhuru Kenyatta asking, why did ODM present these names?
And not even that. A Tanga politician isn't necessarily a useless one for now. If you can be turned to the other side and promote their interests, then they will do that. They'll give you a soft landing and turn you.
Absolutely.
It's politics, right? Not a big deal.
Since when did ODM get so big for their purchase? Like,
Well, this is my other thing.
I'm so confused.
I feel like also Uhuru Kenyatta is making the same mistake he made in 2013, making it seem like he's sharing this decision-making thing
with Raila.
With Raila, no, you are the president. Not that you've forgotten, sir, but you know, I feel like this. I know there was a handshake, but there's also
you know, GK, in the 33 strategies of war, there is a rule, I cannot remember which one exactly, it says you dominate sometimes by submitting.
So
he's being smart about it.
Jubilee still has the upper hand in many ways, so that still isn't
this week I was asking the question, what is the worst case scenario that could happen? This handshake can only go so far. If you feel like or if it appears that you're giving one person too much power, how is this going to end?
Right.
But anyway.
So in the Star, we have COVID.
Yes, more COVID. So the Star is telling us 2.6 million Kenyans have COVID-19, or that's rather according to Kemri. They say shocking. 1 in 5 people in Kenya already infected and recovered. Immunity not assured. Study shows that people with blood group A are more vulnerable and O is more protected. This sounds to me like, what do they call it? Snake oil medicine, but okay. However, what they're talking about here is the fact that based on some tests that they did recently, they found that many Kenyans might have actually had corona and recovered from it. They say that Kemri estimates about 500,000 people in Nairobi and 100,000 people in Mombasa have already contracted and recovered from corona.
Wow.
I will tell you guys, I am one of those people. I am convinced I had corona at the beginning of the year.
Let me tell you too, Jay, a lot of people actually think between the period of November to January, corona was in Kenya.
People had these really bad colds, pneumonia-like symptoms. Some people
cold
even
shivers,
passed
body
away.
aches.
But
one interesting thing they talk about that I think it's very important for many people to understand is the two tests that we have. So on one hand, you have the normal PCR test, which is the nasal and the throat test. That only tells whether or not you have corona, if it's active in your body. But then you have the antibody test, which actually takes blood. So that one tells you whether or not antibodies developed in order to protect your body against corona. So that's how you're then able to tell whether or not you either have it or did have it before.
Yes.
There are not lots of antibody tests, but testing is key.
Yes. So we have a 3-part criteria that we will use to break down those or to assess those 3 headlines. We ask ourselves, are they topical or speculative? Are they repetitive or groundbreaking? And are they thoughtful or just plain lazy?
Toss the Star. It is so speculative.
It's speculative.
It's sensational. It's a lie. 2.6 million people do not have corona.
Yeah, but I think also it should shed light on actually what that number actually
means.
And not scare people unnecessarily.
Most definitely.
What about the Standard?
I liked it.
I would go.
But I would go with the Daily Nation.
I would go with the Daily Nation.
Remaking the cabinet. It is topical. It is telling us something that might be groundbreaking, and it is thoughtful.
Yes.
There you have it. The Daily Nation gives us our winning headline. On to the political pieces that we call cartoons in this country, where we also have a 3-part criteria. We ask ourselves, is it humorous or dry? Is it satirical or pessimistic? And is it effective or just plain lazy?
I love this cartoon by Ndula, and it is a caricature of Uhuru Kenyatta, President Uhuru Kenyatta, and he's cutting a cake, and the cake is to celebrate 100 days of the Nairobi Metropolitan Services, and it's because 100 days, one candle, but the person on the candle is none other than Mike Sonko.
And in the cake.
And he's hugged it with all his life.
And he's in the cake.
Yes. And behind Uhuru Kenyatta is General Buddy, who's a DG of the NMS. And he's there asking for a serving of the cake. And behind him is Senator Johnston Sakaja, who's feeding Wamalo with cake.
And this is the same cast who was there when, they were signing over Nairobi County to the executive.
Absolutely. Yeah. But I mean, guys, have you seen how Nairobi looks like?
Fantastic. The CBD?
Yeah.
Great.
I broke curfew rules and I decided to drive at night.
Shame.
And I was very surprised with how the roads are looking.
Well, in the Star.
Yeah, exactly.
What do we have? We have a swimming pool, a very lovely looking swimming pool.
Yeah.
You have a caricature of?
Yeah, that's Kalonzo Musyoka in a blue bikini.
Now you're done.
That's all I could see. And he's about to go into the pool. And
slide.
The slide, not swing, sorry. And in the pool is Moses Wetangula, Musalia Mudavadi, William Ruto, and Gideon Moi in red Speedos. And what's his name? Mukisa Kitui and
Kifuta
Kibwana have just sprung from them.
Yeah, jumped off the diving board.
And Raila is just watching them.
Yeah. And the caption there is, we can pull off a surprise. I really did. I had such a good giggle.
No, it's a good
Pull
cartoon.
and pull.
It is, yeah.
Who are you laughing at most? Is it Kalonzo?
Kalonzo's bikini for sure.
And Gidi.
Yeah, but also interestingly is that why is Raila not in the pool? We're assuming this is the presidential hopeful pool.
No,
why isn't he in it?
This is very smart because they are jumping into something that may not exist in 2022.
If there's a parliamentary system implemented.
If we go into a referendum, and likely what will happen is we'll go into a parliamentary system. We will, in other words, we will stop going as Kenyans to vote for the presidency or for the president in the ballot.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, the other way they could do it is that you can still vote for the president, but the prime minister is what is picked in parliament. So I think there's many ways this can go, right?
Absolutely. So Kalonzo and Raila are not in bad places. Kalonzo has a ladder to go down. He's just waiting to. So
fantastic.
No, it's a good cartoon.
So there was no cartoon from
the Standard.
So it's between the Star and the Daily Nation. Who do we give it to?
I would give it to the Star.
I would give it to the Star.
Let's give it to Ozone.
It's a smart cartoon.
Ozone from the Star gives us our winning cartoon. And now for our final thought. But before we get there, please remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel.
And now, our final thought. It is inspired by a book entitled Ego is the Enemy by Ryan Holiday. What a name.
It is, something we all want to do.
Yes.
May I give a summary?
Please do.
So this week we've been looking at ideas, the burden of bad ideas, ways of thinking, psychological sort of things that we can do to improve our lives. So on Monday we looked at The Madness of Crowds, Gender, Race and Identity by Douglas Murray. And he asks, how did our society become so insane? He argues that highly intelligent people have clung on to this new religion known as social justice, identity politics and intersectionality. He explores why societies are now so characterized by conflict and how ideas have become weaponized and the rise of this cancel culture. On Tuesday, we looked at black box thinking, why some people never learn from their mistakes, but some do, by Matthew Seard. And here we focus on the importance and value of failure. He taught us that success can only happen when we confront our mistakes. Having a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset, he taught us how having a progressive attitude to failure is good and how black box thinking is ultimately about the willingness to investigate the lessons from when we fail. On Wednesday, we looked at The Burden of Bad Ideas, how modern intellectuals misshape our society by Heather MacDonald. And here she gave us examples of bad ideas that have really been turned into government policies, public health policies, among other things, causing long-lasting damage, and how society is being shaped increasingly by these intellectuals and their modern ideas. Or how sometimes in America, the left-wing American ideology is influencing American national institutions and how dangerous this can be. On Thursday, we looked at The Games People Play, The Psychology of Human Relationships by Eric Byrne. And this was a book that taught us that when we interact with others, we're actually always playing games. And from power games to sexual games and competitive games, most of these games are destructive and are being played unconsciously. But by understanding the games that we play, we can start to develop more meaningful relationships. And today is Friday and we're looking at our egos.
That is true. So this book, Ego is the Enemy, is about your own worst enemy that already lives inside you, your ego. And so this is the second book from this author where he draws upon the principles of Stoicism. So this is that Greek philosophy that speaks of endurance of pain and hardship without displaying any discontent or anger towards those emotions. And so his previous book was called The Obstacle is in the Way, and this book focused on overcoming life's external obstacles, but this book flips the argument to look at life's internal obstacles. And so this book is really filled with cautionary tales about some certain people who let their egos run amok and were eventually undone by this resulting damage. He also gives stories of people who practice self-restraint and sobriety. I don't think he meant actual sobriety, but just being of sober mind, and found success. And so the book provides a very compelling argument for why our ego sometimes hurts us, and also shares some practical suggestions about how we can manage our ego. But I think most importantly, which I found to be true, is that we have to admit sometimes that a moderate ego is sometimes important for success in life. It's, having that braggadocio, right? And it allows us to compete, to strive, to achieve our goals, and allows us to surpass our past achievements. And in the book, he actually says that some psychiatrists even say that slight narcissism in moderate doses is positively correlated with a healthy self-esteem and positive personality.
Absolutely.
I could not agree
has
more.
A healthy dose.
Yes, most definitely. However, this book focuses, though, on the instances where our ego doesn't help us anymore and it actually stands in the way of our success. So he explores the negative aspects of ego, and he does this through looking at several historical and contemporary figures. But he also asks the question, what is an ego? There's lots of definitions, but the one that he uses, he says that ego is the unhealthy belief in your own importance. So having a high sense of self. Again, it doesn't necessarily sound like a bad thing. So the book is divided into 3 parts, which characterize the 3 possible phases of our lives where our ego can spiral out of control and get us into a lot of bad situations. In the book, he says, aspiration leads to success and adversity. Success creates its own adversity and hopefully new ambitions. And adversity leads to aspiration and more successes. And he talks about it being an endless loop. So the 3 phases he talks about are aspiration, wanting to aspire for bigger and better goals. Success, in which we achieve our goals and receive public praise. And finally, failure, where we fall from grace and we deal with that internal resistance. So he uses lots of examples from historical figures, both successful and unsuccessful, to examine this, these destructive properties that our ego can kind of throw us into. And through these stories we kind of understand how dangerous our ego can be, but from my point of view I also saw it as how your ego can also be a helpful thing. I think it's kind of like that thing that pushes you, it gives you confidence, makes you want to do better. There's nothing wrong. I don't think ego is the enemy.
He asks wisdom or ignorance, and then he says ego is a swing vote. So wherever ego is, if you choose to have ego, then you probably be ignorant and you probably fail. Now, I also want to say this. When I was reading this book, I had some conflict, and I was saying, we can't all be secure, right? We need some dose of ego. And I think this book was written for Muzungus, in my view. All right, and my view that every man should have an ego. Now
woman.
And actually, when I say man, I encompass everything. Okay. All genders. Yeah, I'm representative. Now, there's this thing he introduces. He calls it sunk cost fallacy. And he says that this is the fear of taking responsibility or admitting that we have messed up. And so what do? So we, if we have messed up, we throw some very good money into our problems, and end up making everything seem much worse. So he gives a story of a man called John DeLorean, who ran his car company to the ground. And this is because he says this guy had ego, he had greed, he had a mix of negligence. This guy was just not the right guy to run his company. And then when this guy knew and he noticed that his problems were piling up, he decided to do a drug deal of about $60 million. Whoa. But the guy got caught. Now he had 2 problems. His company is down and he had a drug charge. Basically, the guy went down. Now, he says that what actually happened is that this guy failed to realize one thing. And the one thing was his ego. And he says that ego, if you animate ego, what would it look like? And he says that this is what ego asks. Ego asks, why is this happening to me? How do I save this and prove to everyone I'm as great as they think? It's the animal fear of even the slightest sign of weakness. And you know what? To a degree, I agree. But then I also say, what is the point of also letting everybody know that you're in problems? Sometimes you just have to take it as a man and or a woman, and go do what you have to do. But then there's also something he says that I like, and I like to quote him. He says, people learn from their failures. Seldom do they learn anything from success. Very true. It is why the old, you say it's Celtic, it is why the old Celtic saying tells us, see much, study much, suffer much. That is the path to wisdom.
Fantastic. And I'll borrow from the study much. So one of his tenets is that one should always remain a student. And he tells us this is part of success. And he tells us a story of Genghis Khan, who was one of the greatest military minds in the world. Everybody knows this great conqueror. But one of his reigning, or his theme, or his
Yeah.
What do you call it?
His theme?
Yeah, his theme was appropriation.
Yeah.
Wherever he would go, he would appropriate cultures,
Yes.
technologies from wherever he went. And that's what made him so successful.
Yeah.
So the Mongols were ruthless about stealing and absorbing the best of each culture that they encountered. And this is what kept them going.
Yeah.
So Genghis Khan was not born a genius, but instead someone described him as this: a persistent cycle of pragmatic learning, experimental adaptation, and constant revision, driven by his uniquely disciplined and focused will.
Yeah.
Which I think is something we can all take, right? As you are always a student, everyone that you meet. So one of his first powerful victories came from the reorganization of his military units. He recognized the importance of regimentation. So he would split his army in groups of 10. And even for your business or whatever it is that you're doing, when you split people up into smaller units and get them to do a task, they usually tend to do it better, depending on what the task is.
Yeah.
And this he stole from the Turkic tribes. It wasn't something that he came up with.
Yeah.
They also bumped into sort of new technologies of that time, obviously.
Yeah.
So for instance, he came across walled cities. And this, when he would do the tango trades, Khan first learned the ins and outs of, attacking these fortified cities. And he would later, with the help from Chinese engineers, learn and build these machines in order to attack, sort of siege these cities.
Yes.
So build these machines to break down these walls. And that was also borrowed from elsewhere.
Yeah.
But also when he would go to, when he would conquer a new place, he would work with the scholars and the family of the lands that he had conquered. And this is how he was able to hold on and manage these conquered lands, more than any other empires were able to do. And in his troop was always the smartest astrologers, scribes, doctors, thinkers, and advisors, as well as translators, and interrogators, so that he could assimilate these cultures better. So the lesson here is always be a student because it never ends. And also he says, now pick up a book on a topic you know nothing about. He also says that go to a room where you're not the smartest or you're the least knowledgeable person. And he says that the defensiveness you feel when you encounter people who challenge those, deeply held assumptions, that is what helps you grow. That is what helps you be a better person.
Correct. Absolutely.
So on a day where we had a winning headline from Daily Nation, winning cartoon from the Star, I want to leave you with this. In the end, with accomplishment comes a growing pressure to pretend that we know more than we do. And that's the worry and the risk, thinking that you're set and you're secure, you're successful now. And in reality, understanding that mastery is fluid and is a continual process. So you never really know everything, and you can always learn from someone else. So please subscribe to our YouTube channel once again, but also find us on TV. We're on GoTV, Prank Peter, and Star Times. Have a lovely weekend.